Quiet on the set, please.
Camera speed.
Sound production, take one.
And action!
Welcome to From Beneath the Hollywood Sign. If you love old movies, Hollywood history, or the golden age of filmmaking, you've come to the right place. This is the podcast that talks about amazing stories of Tinseltown from another era. Hear fascinating conversations with writer-producer Steve Cubine, who quite literally lives just beneath the Hollywood sign, and actress-writer Nan McNamara. Now your hosts, Steve and Nan.
Welcome, everyone, to From Beneath the Hollywood Sign podcast. One of the things that Steve and I love about the stars of classic Hollywood is how many of them have managed to keep shining long after the studio era ended. We've talked about this in previous episodes. How many of old Hollywood stars continuing their careers meant finding a new stage, which would be the television screen. So today, we're going to talk about those movie legends who made the jump from film to TV, and in particular, the television shows that gave them the opportunities time and time again to remain in the spotlight and for fans to see them in a whole new light. So to join us in this conversation, we're so excited to have Brandon Davis. Brandon is the host of NPR Illinois' podcast Front Row Classics. He is the official historian of Front Row Network. Steve and I had the honor of appearing on his podcast, Front Row Classics, October 4th episode to discuss Warner Brothers. And we are also fellow TCM folks that get to go to the festival and cover it for our podcast. So we're just so excited to have a lively discussion with Brandon about our favorite classic cinema stars and how they found a second act, right, on the small screen. So welcome, Brandon.
Welcome, Brandon.
Thank you, Steve and Nan. Thank you so much. It's fun to have the tables turn and be a guest. I had other podcasters on my show last week, and they were saying how just what a nice change of pace it is to be a guest on someone's show.
Yeah.
Yes, it truly is. Well, I think all three of us, when we were talking about this topic of conversation, we all went down the rabbit hole and realized how many shows there are.
So many good ones.
Yeah. So we thought what we would do is start with the 50s.
Yeah.
And pick out some of our favorites, some of the ones where so many of the classic cinema stars appeared, and then pick out favorite performances within each of those shows. So, Steve, why don't you kick us off?
Well, yeah, but before we kick into specifics, I did want to say, and I think it's so interesting, the whole film versus television fight that has been going on for decades. When television first came about, it was a big threat to the studio bosses, and they really forbid their actors to appear on television. They were under exclusive contracts, and they said, no, you can't appear on TV. They thought TV was lowbrow. They thought it would overexpose their classic stars. So it's interesting that the tide shifted as time went on and people realized, oh, this is a very wonderful way to keep your name out there and your face out there and, stay a star.
And keep some money in the bank.
And keep it in the bank, exactly.
Yeah.
But to me, the person who I think rallied her friends around her the most, all these classic stars, and invited them to be guest stars on her various shows, and there were 4 of them, I believe, was Lucille Ball. So, Brandon, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Lucy shows and all the great guest stars that she brought in. Usually they were her friends, but it was incredible. I love the people she brought on.
Well, when we talked about doing this topic, Lucy was the first one that popped to mind because I love Lucy. There's especially the season 4 and into season 5 where they do the Hollywood season.
Oh, the best.
That is where she really shines with guest stars. They would do it later on also in a few episodes, but really it's that main season where they do guest star after guest star. And it makes sense because you have Ricky there doing a movie and they're on the studio lots. And so it makes sense that she's going to run into so many people. But, you're right. I mean, someone like Lucille Ball, who was raised within the studio system and never really, the studio just never really knew what to do with her because she could do pretty much everything.
Yeah.
And so it was hard for them to find a niche for her. And it took television to really make her a star. And so it's so great to see all these luminaries come into the playground with her on her shows. And of course, I Love Lucy, I think, is the cream of the crop of all the 4 shows she did. Although there are moments on the Lucy show and Here's Lucy that are very, very fun and a couple legendary guest starring episodes. But some of those Hollywood shows are just
Now,
comedy classics.
Focusing on the episodes that happened in Hollywood, she met Eve Arden, William Holden, Cornell Wilde, Richard Widmark. Do you have a favorite episode from those specific episodes?
There's a couple of really famous ones, but I have a special place in my heart for the tour, the one with Richard Widmark.
And was it grapefruit or orange that they?
It's a grapefruit tree.
Yes.
Yeah, she and Ethel are on a Hollywood Homes tour, and she has read in a magazine, I believe, about the grapefruit trees in Richard Widmark's backyard, and she wants to take one home, and so they leave the bus and they go into the backyard to get it, but unfortunately Lucy falls into the yard, so Ethel is trying to get into the house to get her out, and Lucy has to sneak into the house, and she pretends to be taxidermy at one point. and then finally Ethel has to recruit Fred to come and help her get Lucy out of the house, and I think they pretend like they are a doctor and nurse from a sanitarium, and Lucy's a patient who's come out.
Exactly. I mean, classic. And for me, it was the John Wayne episode where they steal his footprints from cement.
Yeah.
Just iconic. I just love the idea that they thought they could get away with this. I mean, where was security?
Right.
I know.
I love there's a couple, I mean, there's many, but the one that pops into mind is the William Holden episode where they're in the two booths and the cigarette and then, oh my gosh, it's just classic. And then of course, Harpo Marx, that is just probably one of the most famous episodes that she had.
Well, and then another one that I think is just really heartwarming is the one with Van Johnson. I think probably because, Lucy and Van were such good friends because they had been in several movies together at that point, but it's one of the times where Lucy really gets to not be a flop when she tries show business. She really comes off well in the dance routine she does with Van Johnson, and she gets a little bit of taste of what success in show business is like. And it's really heartwarming, those little moments when she comes off the stage and she realizes, I really could be something at some point. And it's great. The little routine that she does with Van is wonderful.
All right, let's move on from Lucy and talk about Wagon Train.
Yes, we have to talk about Wagon Train because it was such a great show. It ran for 8 seasons from 1957 to 1965. And the thing I loved the most about it was every episode was an entirely new story.
Well, and I think that's why, and Brendan, let me know what you think about this. I think it's why it lent itself so beautifully to these stars taking over the episode. There were regulars certainly on the show. Yeah. But it featured for this hour-long episode, whoever the guest star was. So I think it was like a little mini movie for each of the folks that were on it.
I think the reason why shows like Wagon Train and then, later on Have Gun Will Travel, Gunsmoke, The Big Valley, shows like that, I think they really lent themselves to bigger stars coming on because they are cinematic, probably more than your other,
very much so,
probably than your other television shows. So they feel larger than life. So they lend themselves to people coming on. And of course, you had someone at the helm of Wagon Train like Ward Bond, who had been around and worked with everybody at that point.
Yeah.
So he could easily pull from his Rolodex.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, Ward Bond, he was in Gone with the Wind. That's how far back he goes. Yeah,
and what a Rolodex he clearly had.
Yeah, and then wasn't it John McIntyre, I think, came in, and later Robert Fuller came in.
Ward Bond.
Because I love that even the Wagon Train master changed throughout the seasons, which was interesting.
Yeah, but it's amazing when you go through the roster of Wagon. I mean, just in the first few episodes. I mean, I was going through the episode guide. Ernest Borgnine and Ricardo Montalban and Shelley Winters, and amazing roster of people.
And Dan Duryea, 7 episodes.
7 episodes.
Those were the days when you could be a guest on a show multiple times, and they would just change the character. And nowadays, they would never do that. But I love that you can find, somebody like Dan Duryea on the episode. Times.
And there's one episode in particular that I wanted to talk about because I loved it so much. And of course, it's with my favorite, Barbara Stanwyck. And she was on it, I think, 3 times, but there's one in particular called the Maud Fraser story. And she plays this woman on the wagon train, and her husband and all the menfolk are killed. And so she decides to take it upon herself to continue the wagon train with all the women. And it was a really wonderful early feminist storyline.
Yeah,
I
that
think
is.
is way ahead of its time. And she is so good in that particular episode that I love that it gave these stars such meaty roles to sink their teeth into.
Well, she was never bad,
It
right?
never, even in the Colbys.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Well, and that was the only reason to watch the Colbys.
Exactly.
Yeah,
No,
for sure.
but what I think is so wonderful, and what was so wonderful about TV at that time is you could have, different than Lucy, where so many people would come on as themselves, and it was the gimmick that you were getting a big star playing themselves. But shows like Wagon Train, and then you also have shows like those anthology shows like Twilight Zone or Route
Yes.
66
Yes.
or something like that, where you could have great actors come on and play different characters and come on several different times because no one ever thought these shows would be seen again. They'd be seen
Yeah.
once, maybe rerun once, and that was going to be it. And so it not until years later with syndication and DVD and VHS and things like that, where you can say, oh, this person did this 7 times and played 7 different characters.
I
Yeah.
love it. I
Yeah.
love that.
Brandon, anything that jumps to mind from Wagon Train?
The ones that I remember from sitting down with my dad, because he's a STANWYCK fan too, or any of the ones with STANWYCK, and I
Yes.
think that anytime she appeared on TV was an event. And of course, I think she enjoyed working on TV because she had her own show for a while, and then
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
of
and then
course.
of course starred in the Big Valley for four
Right.
years.
And I loved the Big Valley.
I loved the Big Valley too.
Oh, I wanted to be Heath Barkley, bastard son.
Yeah. She was phenomenal in that. And just the perfect matriarch.
Totally. Well, getting back to Wagon Train for just
Yeah.
a minute, I would love just to read a few of the guest stars.
Yeah, please
Go
do.
ahead.
This is such an impressive list of people that it lured into its fold. Betty Davis, Peter Lorre, John Wayne, Lee Marvin, Mickey Rooney, Broderick Crawford, Agnes Moorehead, Jean Crane, Linda Darnell, Ida Lupino, Ronald Reagan, Rhonda Fleming, Ernest Borgnine, Boris Karloff. It goes on. Sterling Hayden, Ann Baxter, Vera Miles, Martha Heyer, Gene Tierney. I mean, the list goes on. Every major star, it seems,
Yeah.
Yes.
appeared on Wagon Train. And
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah, well, and Betty Davis also appears in one of my favorite episodes of Gunsmoke,
Yeah.
where she and her sons, I believe, take Miss Kitty hostage.
Oh, yeah.
And she's a vicious villain in that episode.
And basically, it's the same episode of The Big Valley with Colleen Dewhurst and her
That's
sons
true, yeah.
who take Audra and Victoria hostage. So I think they might have borrowed the script a little bit.
I love
they
that.
did.
Well, can we move on to one of my favorites, which is Perry Mason, which also ran for quite a long time,
Sure.
1957 to 1966. And then, of course, many iterations, but the one we're talking about is the original with Raymond Burr. And what's another fascinating thing about Perry Mason is that behind the scenes, one of the executive producers is also a classic cinema star. That would be the fabulous Gail Patrick, who we know.
Yes.
If you can't connect the name to the face, she was in My Man Godfrey, played the sister.
Bitchy sister.
Oh my gosh, she
Yeah.
was wonderful. And another of my favorite roles of hers is My Favorite Wife with Cary Grant. And that
She always played the other woman.
she did, and she did it so well.
Oh,
So-
absolutely.
But this one also is just a treasure trove of, let me just reel some of these off for you.
Well, first of all, I mean, it starred 2 wonderful classic film stars in Raymond Burr and Barbara Hill.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Before they did that,
Yeah.
they were all over
were
classic
movie stars.
classic film. And then in addition to the people that were the series regulars, we've got, oh my goodness, Hugh Marlowe, 6 episodes. Fay Ray, Richard Carlson did 2 episodes. Elisha Cook Jr., Marie Windsor,
Oh, we love her.
4 episodes. And some of the folks we've talked about on the podcast, Gigi Perot, Colleen Gray, Audrey Totter. I mean,
Audrey, yeah.
it's just Tom Conway and a very young Robert Redford. So, Brandon, any thoughts on Perry Mason?
Oh, I love Perry Mason, and so many of those. With Redford having just passed away, I rewatched a lot of his early TV work that he did. On both Perry Mason,
Yes.
Twilight Zone. The one that always sticks out to me, and we've talked about her already, though, Betty Davis, is the episode where she actually fills in for Perry Mason as a defense attorney, because I believe Raymond Burr was in the hospital or something during the filming
Yeah.
of that episode, and so to see Betty Davis play a defense attorney is really, really fun and really cool.
Yeah.
It's so
And-
fun.
And that was a little ahead of its time, too, I think.
In the script, they make a point of saying a woman attorney, like they're
right.
just scoffing at
Appalled.
them. Yeah. Yeah. But what did you think of her performance?
Oh, I think it's really good because
Me too.
it's really subdued. I always think that she is really, really great. When we think of Betty Davis, we think of the manic flailing of the arms with the cigarettes and the wide eyes and everything. But I just did an episode a couple of months ago on the Little Foxes with somebody, and my guest and I were talking about how great Betty is when she's just still and controlled.
Yes.
And I really enjoy sort of her more quiet performances, and I think it's really showcased well in that Perry Mason episode, and actually in that Gunsmoke episode I was talking about too. She's not quite as manic as we're used to her being.
Yeah. And I wonder if it's because she had a conscious feeling about, okay, it's the small screen, so I
can't be as big.
Maybe. But I do love her performance on that. I also was really impressed in the Perry Masons that I've seen how they're shot. They're very film noirish. They're very well done. We were chatting earlier about getting to see a very young Los Angeles in the 1950s.
The streets and the parts of town they're in. That's like, oh, that's Chinatown. Oh, that's Mulholland. Yes.
Yeah.
Which is fun.
Well, and that's what's so great about TV and movies of the 50s through the 70s, because that's when they really started doing location work. And so they really are time capsules.
They really are.
Those specific times. I was just talking to someone I love movies shot in New York from like the late 60s, early 70s to see like gritty New York. And and so the same, and I love seeing like the Los Angeles of the 50s.
Exactly. Yeah. I have to highlight one other performance from Perry Mason, and that is your fairy godmother, Anne Rutherford. Yes. She actually did
3 or 4
episodes total, but the one in particular, the top of the episode is her escaping from a sanitarium. She hits a nurse over the head. She's had a nervous breakdown, and she's trying to get money back from her ex-husband, who is a philandering thief, and she gets accused of killing him. She is phenomenal and stunning.
It's a great episode.
Stunning. It's such a great episode. Yeah. So fun to see her in that way.
Yeah. And I don't think we can not mention, if we're going to talk about Perry Mason, we can't not mention Ray Collins, William Tallman, and William Hopper.
Yeah.
Who also were regulars, but they also had pretty significant film careers in their day.
So many great character actors from the golden age got really steady jobs on TV. And it's amazing. I think about, Dr. Kildare, Raymond Massey, as Dr. Gillespie, with Richard Chamberlain. He had a nice steady, career. And then I just did an episode on Talk of the Town, the George Stevens movie, and we were talking about how wonderful, great character actors like Edgar Buchanan would find great fame on Petticoat Junction.
Petticoat Junction.
Right. Yeah. Moving on, I think our next show we wanted to maybe talk about was, and this is campy fun. And speaking of Anne Rutherford, it was produced by her husband, Bill Dozier. And of course, I'm talking about Batman, which ran for 3 seasons from 66 to 68. There were so many delicious guest stars on that one. Do you have a favorite, Brandon?
I love the 4 main villains that everyone thinks of. Cesar Romero as the Joker, Burgess Meredith as the Penguin, Frank Gorshin as the Riddler, and then, you had 3 Catwomen. You had Julie Newmar, Lee Merriweather, and Eartha Kitt, all 3 who I love for different reasons. But there's some that are just wacky. Tallulah Bankhead as the Black Widow.
Yes.
Or Milton Berle as Louis the Lilac. And then in one episode, he has a sidekick named Lola Lasagna, played by Ethel Merman.
Okay. Can I just say how impressed I am with you, Brandon, to be able to spit all that out?
I love 60s Batman.
And their character names, too.
That's very good. Very good.
I loved Ida Lupino and Howard Duff when they were together. Because it's funny, when they hooked up as a couple, they kind of did the rounds. I mean, they guest starred in everything together. I love that they became this unit.
Well, because they appear on a Lucy Desi comedy hour together.
Absolutely. That's what I was thinking of.
Which is a lot of fun. Yeah. It's nice to see them together. And it's funny how that show just hit like a bullet when it came out and was like such a phenomenon from the beginning. And there were people who begged to be on it I know Frank Sinatra wanted to come on and be a Bond villain, but they somehow never got around to him, or the deal never went through. But, you also had not only guest stars as villains, but you had the guest stars, during the famous bits when they would be scaling up the wall. And,
Yes.
Like that's
you
that's the
had
one time, that like Edgar G. Robinson. He's the one I think of that he only did one of those where they're climbing up the building and he's in the window, and I loved it.
And Jerry Lewis did one, and Sammy Davis Jr. did one. Yeah, it really was a phenomenon.
And when you think about it, how smart, because not only are they hitting probably an adult audience, but kids who would be new to their careers.
Well, I do have to say, and I'll add this, I did talk to Ann Rutherford about Batman at one point. And the one thing she did tell me, and it sort of goes back to what you were saying, Brandon, that all of a sudden she and Bill became extremely popular because all these stars wanted to be on the show. So they would send over gifts and they would take them to dinner. And she said it was really this funny phenomenon where all of a sudden everybody wants to be on Batman. And there's only a certain amount of episodes, a certain amount of parts. So they had to not cast a lot of people, which was awkward for them socially. So.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh no, what I think is great about 60s Batman too is that when you watch it as a kid, like I remember watching reruns as a kid, you just watch it at face value, just for the action and the color. And then as you grow older, you appreciate it on another level, and you see it's such tongue-in-cheek, campy humor that they knew
and kind of and kind of naughty sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. And they were able to get away with it because it was just over the heads of so many censors. And it's just a lot of fun. I was watching an episode with a friend a few weeks ago, and I'm like, how did they get away with some of this stuff? And it's just, it's hysterical. But so many other, Vincent Price and Ann Baxter and Roddy McDowell and Van Johnson and Shelley Winters and Cliff Robertson. So many incredible people.
Dina Merrill, Elisha Cook Jr., Carolyn Jones. There's so many great ones on that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, before we launch into a few more that we want to talk about, I think it's time for this week's Hollywood Pop Quiz.
And the pop quiz question today is, and Brandon, you might know this, who holds the record for the most guest star appearances on The Love Boat?
Oh, okay. All right, let's give that some thought.
Actually, I have a top three. So if you name any of the three, you get a point.
We win. Oh, just a point? Okay. All right. Okay, we'll be right back with the answer to that and more with Brandon Davis and classic cinema stars on television after this.
Steve and Ann will be right back, but first another stop on the Hollywood tour. They're about to talk about Columbo. You may remember the Peter Falk's Columbo originally aired on NBC from 1971 to 78. It was one of the rotating programs of the NBC mystery movie. But other classic Hollywood era actors made the same jump to television. One of the other rotating shows in that series of mysteries was Macmillan and Wife. It starred Rock Hudson and Susan St. James as a husband and wife crime-fighting duo. Hudson's character was a hip, sophisticated San Francisco City police commissioner, and later the Snoop Sisters, starring Helen Hayes and Mildred Natwick as two elderly sisters who routinely found mysteries to solve. Amy Prentice starred Jessica Walter as the fictional first female chief of detectives for the San Francisco Police Department. That series, by the way, was a spin-off of Ironside. In addition, there was also McCoy, starring Tony Curtis as a professional con man thief, and finally George Peppard played a suave private detective in the show Banachek. By the way, the theme for that series of shows was written by Henry Mancini and even went on to become a surprising hit on the radio. Oh well, you remember that. And now back to Steve and Ann from Beneath the Hollywood Sign.
Welcome back, everybody. We're excited to have Brandon Davis from Front Row Classics podcast with us today, and we are talking about classic cinema stars who appeared as guest stars on some of our favorite television shows. But before we get back into that, I wanted to give a shout out to our listener of the week. And this week, we are honoring Melissa Bonato. Melissa, thank you for the support. Thank you for the kind word. We really appreciate all the support.
Thank you, Melissa. All right, this next one I want to talk about is my happy place. or I should say, when I need to be in a happy place, I turn on an old episode of Columbo. And boy, what an amazing list of folks.
Treasure trove.
Yeah. Of course, starting with Peter Falk, right? As the title character, he made his own transition to television. having starred in the John Cassavetes films, most especially A Woman Under the Influence, 1974. We talked about in our Jenna Rollins tribute in episode 53, and so many others. And also, let's not forget that Steven Spielberg directed the first episode in season 1 of Columbo. So talk about, he's not a classic cinema star, but man, that's a...
And whatever happened to him?
I know.
I know.
Well, this one has Janet Leigh, Ray Milland, Vera Miles, Lawrence Harvey, Roddy McDowell, Jeanette Nolan, Ruth Gordon, John Cassavetes, as I just said, stars in a fabulous one playing a concert conductor who murders his pianist girlfriend, Jenna Rollins, and the list goes on and on. Any favorites for you guys? I have one that I want to talk about, but I want to hear what you guys think.
Well, the one that always jumps out to me, because we were talking about classic film stars, is Forgotten Lady, the one with Janet Leigh and John Payne, and
Yes, John Payne.
And Sam Jaffe and Morris Evans. I mean, it's a wonderful, wonderful cast, and it deals with an aging Hollywood starlet. So that's a lot of fun. And what I love about Columbo is that people who you would never expect to be villains and be murderers on episodes, or what Dick Van Dyke is a murderer on one episode.
Multiple, I think. Yeah. I love that about it too. I love the format of the show, but you're right. It gave opportunities for people you would never think of necessarily as being a villain. One of the ones that I love is, there's two. There's one with Johnny Cash and Ida Lupino.
That's my favorite, right?
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, my favorite.
That's a great one.
Who had Ida Lupino with Johnny Cash?
And Johnny Cash, he really kind of holds his own. He's pretty good. But the performance that really stands out for me, and I'm just such a fan of hers, is Lee Grant in Ransom for a Dead Man, which is actually the second pilot for the series. And I found a clip of her talking about her performance in this and how she loved doing this episode. She plays a brilliant attorney who's married to a member of the state Supreme Court and ends up murdering him after she's gotten ahead using his name. And she concocts this amazing scheme. And I love how Peter Falk and Lee Grant play off of each other. There's almost sort of a sexual tension, even though he's very true to his wife. And she really respects him in a way that many of the murderers do on that series. But she's just a phenomenal actress, and she does such a great job.
Oh, absolutely. I love Falk's chemistry with everybody because he just has such an offbeat way of delivering lines and way of just approaching that role. And so it's so different to see him acting with people who try and be so put together. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah. His physicality is brilliant.
I don't think we can move on and not talk about Edith Head.
Oh, I know. On the Baxter episode.
Edith Head plays herself, basically, with Ann Baxter as another faded movie star, which seemed to be a common theme in these shows. But it was just so cool because she's not an actress. She's just a personality, and we also relate to her. It's just fun to see her.
And her Oscars are behind her. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know if she'd won the last one yet.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. Love that series.
Yeah, Columbo's, it's good comfort watching.
Yeah. All right. But your comfort one is?
Oh, well, my comfort watching, and all through the pandemic when I just stayed at home, to comfort myself, I just watched reruns of The Love Boat. And that to me is the motherlode of all classic cinema stars being guest stars. I mean, everybody appeared on that show.
There's not anybody they missed.
And there's so many wonderful storylines and performances. One that sticks out to me that I just love, and every time I see it, I get a little teary because it's so good. It's with the great Glynis Johns, and she's there with her grandson on the Love Boat. They're taking a cruise because the little boy thinks that she's dying, and that's why they're on this cruise. But as you find out, he's the one who's dying.
Oh God, you just gutted me.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Figure out that it's so beautifully acted, and I wish I could remember the name of the kid because he's so good, and he holds his own with the great Glynis, who's incredible. She just delivers such a compassionate, beautiful performance that, some of the storylines are really silly and frivolous, and they're fun too, but this one really got me. Yeah. Really landed a punch.
It's amazing how the Love Boat can sneak up on you at times
Yes.
with a certain, touching storyline. But what I love about that, and Aaron Spelling just had such a reverence for classic Hollywood. And, he grew up around it.
Yeah.
He was an extra
Yeah.
in so many movies, and so he just apparently just always treated everybody well. He said that they always had, incredible food, incredible flowers in their dressing rooms. He just knew how to treat all these veterans, and he loved giving them these jobs when a lot of them hadn't worked in 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and of course, not just Love Boat, but he did, two other anthologies, Fantasy Island and Hotel,
Yeah.
which featured classic guest stars. But I think that there's so many, that you could point out. I think the one that's probably the most famous is the Love Boat Follies, the musical episode where
Yeah,
you
with
have
all the greats.
it's Ethel Merman, it's Carol Channing, it's Cab Calloway, it's Van Johnson, it's Della Reese,
Della Reese, that's
and it's
right.
and Ann Miller.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's and it's just an amazing group of people. But one of my favorites though, it's an episode. I think and it's one of those. My favorite episodes are the ones where they took actual cruises and went on location to places, and it's
Right.
Sure.
I believe they're in Hong Kong, and it's Gene Kelly is in it, and he plays Gopher and Isaac are convinced he's a spy, and so they're following him around, and Gene Kelly is trying to woo Yvette Mimieux, and she's in that one, and then there's another storyline in that episode involving Donna Reed and Ephraim Zimbalist, and so they just had everybody on that show.
Wow.
I just saw that episode.
I mean,
Yeah.
did you really? Oh,
I
gosh,
just
I'll
saw it,
look that
yeah.
one up.
Yeah. Yeah, and then there's I just saw another great one a few weeks ago. Vincent Price plays this sort of has-been magician who's trying to hide out on the boat, and his wife is played by Joan Blondell.
Yes.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and Vincent Price really kind of went to town. He was even on the Brady Bunch
Yeah.
on the Hawaii episode. So yeah.
Yeah,
Daddy needed money.
and he appeared a couple of. He was very funny when he did his guest spots on Carol Burnett,
Yes.
of someone
Yeah.
else who had a lot of classic stars on her show.
Yeah.
I love that.
Absolutely.
And I love the fact that for the Love Boat, and I think this is Aaron Spelling probably and his love and appreciation for classic cinema, but I love how he could bring somebody so obscure like Louise Reiner, two-time Oscar winner, who just basically left Hollywood and has never been heard from again.
Right.
I love that he brought her back.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It wasn't just the celebrity of the day. It was all these kind of forgotten stars.
No, and how he was able to get people like Lillian Gish and Helen Hayes on the Love Boat.
Yes.
I mean, that's pretty remarkable. I mean, it wasn't just your, Alexa Smiths or June Allisons. He had like these really heavy hitting theater actors, and he had Mary Martin and so many people.
It does make you wonder what their contracts read, how much they got. That could get pricey, right?
I actually read somewhere, and I think it was an article about the original casting director of the show, and they made the decision early on that every star would be most favored nations.
Oh, I like that.
So basically,
Yeah.
I don't know what the fee was, but basically you're offered a role and this fee, no negotiation.
And probably a very nice, if it was somewhere on location, a very nice place to stay. And
I'm
all
sure. I kind of love that you didn't have to fight about who's going to get what and all
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I do know there were a couple of people who they tried to get, but they never were able to snag them. I know that they tried to get Julie Andrews and it never happened, and they tried to get Lucy and it never happened. And there were a couple of people, and they said the one who I think the Love Boat kind of had a bit of a stigma where some people thought maybe it was like your career was over if you did the Love Boat.
Yes.
And so Elizabeth Taylor turned it down, but then she showed up on Hotel a couple of years later.
I know, in General Hospital.
I was going to say in a soap opera.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. We can't not talk about Murder, She Wrote.
Oh, that's another one. The motherload of guest stars.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Brandon, do you have some favorites from that one?
I love Murder, She Wrote. And I think it's because just the attraction of working with Angela Lansbury drew so many people there because she was such a professional. And I love No, there's so many. There's a wonderful episode called Widow Weep for Me, where Jessica has a friend who's written her a letter that she's in trouble. Jessica doesn't realize she's been murdered yet when she gets there, but Jessica is like masquerading as her and pretending to be someone else. And so she's staying at this resort, and the resort is managed by Sid Charisse and Mel Ferrer. And then one of the people who end up getting murdered in that episode, I think because she's stolen money, she's like a kleptomaniac or something, is Mary Wicks.
Yes. I love Mary Wicks.
It's so funny, like some of the people who would end up being murderers or getting murdered on Murder, She Wrote.
Yes. Yeah, this one has so many. Ernest Borgnine, Eleanor Parker, Sherry North, who I love.
Oh, I love Sherry.
Henry Morgan,
Yeah.
Mildred Natwick.
Yeah.
I mean, just so Howard Duff.
And I believe Murder, She Wrote was the very last acting performance ever by Anne Blythe.
Oh.
I think. Yeah,
Wow.
too. I believe that, yeah, it's amazing some of the people that she was able to get. There's another one of my favorites. She has the Jessica Fletcher fan club, and they're trying to solve a murder with her. And I believe it's like Jane Withers and Betty Garrett and Marie Windsor and Margaret O'Brien. It's an amazing group of veteran actresses.
Oh, wouldn't you
Yeah.
just love to sit down and have a glass of wine with that
Yeah.
circle of ladies?
Well, one of my favorite episodes, and I just had to look up the name of it because I couldn't remember it. It was called Mr. Penroy's Vacation. And the reason I love this is it guest starred Teresa Wright and Joan Leslie as these two Dottie sisters.
Oh my God. I have to look that
And
one up.
it's so good, and it's just so fun to see them, and they're so good, and they play sisters so beautifully. So I just love those opportunities these ladies were given.
All right. Should we end with?
Oh yeah, we're going to end with.
All right. Brandon,
Falcon
let's talk
Crest.
about Falcon's
Yeah,
Crest.
yeah. Well, what I love is also, in the 80s, also many thanks to people like Aaron Spelling, is you had those 4 big primetime soaps of, Dallas Dynasty, Knots Landing, and Falcon Crest. And they all had, big major Dynasty, most famously Rock Hudson. And then, we talked about the Colbys, but Barbara Stanwyck and Charlton Heston.
Yeah,
Yes.
and Catherine Ross too, I believe.
Yeah. And then Dallas, Howard Keel and Barbara Bel Geddes and
Donna Reed, the
Alexis
second
Smith,
Mrs. Miss Ellie.
and then most famously Knots Landing had Ava Gardner for a storyline.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
but the one who utilized it most was Falcon Crest, I feel like, because you had Jane Wyman in the lead, and really to give Jane Wyman at that point in her life a really just one of the most vicious villains at that point, and she's
Yes.
so great. But as I was going down the list of people who were in that, I mean, you had Cesar Romero, Mel Ferrer, Gina Lola Brigida, Lana Turner, most famously, and of
There we
course
go.
and of course, that sparked a lot of publicity because apparently Miss Wyman and Miss Turner didn't get along very well. But also Celeste Holm and Rod Taylor and Eddie Albert, Eve Arden. I mean, an amazing roster of people.
It's
Kim
just,
Novak. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's just amazing. I mean, and many of these shows you can actually find and watch either free on streamers or you can find some old episodes on YouTube. So listeners, if you're interested in that, there's just so much out there to see. Yeah.
Go down the rabbit hole.
So Brandon, how can our listeners find you and your podcast, Front Row Classics?
Yeah, well, you can find it anywhere you find your podcast. So just look for Front Row Classics. I'm on Spotify, I'm on Apple, I'm on Amazon, Audible, anywhere. Just look up Front Row Classics podcast and you will find me.
Perfect.
Awesome.
And we look forward to seeing you at the TCM Film Festival next.
Yes.
I believe it's the end of April, beginning of May. We just got the
Beginning
email.
of May. Yeah. They just
Yes.
released the dates this last week.
Yeah, so that's very exciting. All right, we have to give the answer to this week's
Oh.
Hollywood Pop Quiz, and I'm just can't wait to hear the answer.
And it's great. And the question, of course, was who holds the record for the most guest star performances on The Love Boat? Do you care to wager a bet or a guess, Brandon?
Well, I believe it was Charo, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh,
She was one of them.
Was she one of them?
She was
Yeah.
one of the 3 that come to mind.
Yeah.
In first position with 14 guest performances or guest appearances was Marion Ross.
Oh, that's right.
She played various characters, and then she ended up playing the character who ends up marrying Captain Steubing.
That's right. She became a regular. That's true.
Yeah.
okay.
And then
Yeah.
with 10 appearances each, we have Charo, of course, who was
Charo,
always a breath of fresh air and always so fun. But it was also Florence Henderson from the Brady Bunch. She was on there 10 times.
Wow, as different characters.
Different characters every time.
Wow.
Okay.
See, and I believe Charo always played the same character.
Yeah, and I forgot
Yeah.
the character's name. It was yes, and she always
Yeah.
played the dancer, musician, yes.
Really? Because I think of her as having such a wide range. All right, that was very snarky. I'm sorry, Charo. I did not mean that to be so snarky.
She'll never come on our show now.
She probably won't, yeah. Well, Brandon, thank you so much for joining us. This has been so much fun. And listeners, thank you for being with us. We'd love it if you would follow us on social media. Our handle is @FromBeneathTheHollywoodSign. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you want to watch the podcast, you can find us on YouTube and give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you do that.
And we love your email, so email us and let us know what your favorite Love Boat episode is. You can catch us at info@FromBeneathTheHollywoodSign.
That's this week's view.
From Beneath the Hollywood Sign.
You've been listening to From Beneath the Hollywood Sign with Steve Cubine and Ann McNamara, the podcast that celebrates amazing stories of Tinseltown from its golden era. Join us next week for another episode and learn something else about Hollywood you probably never knew. Take a moment and give us a 5-star rating and a positive review, and tell your friends about us too. It'll help grow the podcast. Visit Steve's website at FromBeneathTheHollywoodSign.com. The executive producers are Steve Cubine and Nan McNamara. Executive producer and post-production supervisor Lindsay Schnebley. Associate producer and researcher John Price Ritchie. This podcast is part of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. Visit airwavemedia.com to listen and subscribe to their other fine shows like The Box of Oddities and The Shallow End with Schnebley and Toth. Copyright 2025. All rights reserved. That's a wrap.